Khun Sa. He never learned to read, he never learned to write, and yet he built a drug empire that flooded American streets with some of the purest heroin ever tested. Khun Sa was born in 1934 in a hill village so remote it barely appeared on maps. His father died when he was 3. His mother followed 2 years later. His grandfather raised him in the highlands of Burma's Shan state, half Chinese by blood, fully belonging to neither world. There was no school, no future laid out in front of him, so he carved one from the only raw material available: violence. By 16, he had formed his first armed gang. By his 20s, he was training alongside Chinese nationalist soldiers who had fled into Burma after losing the Civil War. They taught him military tactics. The opium fields taught him everything else. He learned that the hills were full of gold if you were willing to kill for it. In 1963, the Burmese government offered him a deal few men could refuse: fight the communist insurgents along the border, and in exchange, they would look the other way while he moved product down their roads. He accepted without hesitation. Within years, he controlled territory most armies couldn't hold. Then everything collapsed. In 1967, a rival force ambushed his mule trains and seized his entire opium shipment. 2 years later, the Burmese government arrested him for treason and threw him into Mandalay prison. He spent 5 years behind bars. While there, he read Sun Tzu's Art of War cover to cover. He came out calmer, sharper, and far more dangerous than when he went in. After his release, he rebuilt from nothing. He crossed into Thailand and raised the Mong Thai army, 20,000 soldiers under his command, heroin refineries hidden in the jungle, a trafficking network so efficient it supplied nearly half of all the heroin entering the United States at its peak. The DEA had a name for his product: 90% pure. They put a $2 million bounty on his head. He kept expanding anyway. He even tried to go legitimate. He offered to sell his entire opium harvest to Western governments twice in exchange for development aid for his people. Both times they refused, so he kept selling it to someone else. By the mid-90s, the walls were closing in. Rival armies moved against him. His territory shrank. In 1996, he negotiated a secret surrender with the Burmese military. He handed over his army and his weapons. In return, no extradition, no trial, no prison. He was allowed to retire in Yangon with his fortune intact. He died in 2007 at 73 years old. Diabetes and heart disease. In his bed, surrounded by his wealth, unpunished. The DEA spent 3 decades hunting him, and he outlasted every one of them. Felix Mitchell. The projects on 69th Avenue in East Oakland had a way of making the future feel impossible. Mitchell decided to build one anyway. Felix Wayne Mitchell Jr. was born in 1954. He dropped out of high school and pulled together a crew from his block. They called themselves the 69 Mob. What started as teenagers running corner schemes became the first organized, large-scale street drug operation the Bay Area had ever seen. He built supplier connections all the way to Los Angeles and Detroit, and spread a heroin distribution network across California and deep into the Midwest. At his peak, the 69 Mob was pulling in close to $1 million a month. Mitchell ran it like a corporation. He branded the product, stamped his envelopes, posted children on every corner as lookouts. Anyone who moved against his territory got a visit they didn't recover from. He didn't just dominate the drug trade. He invented the blueprint other street operations would study for decades. The money bought everything: Rolls Royces, jewelry, parties that people talked about for years. But he also handed out turkeys at Thanksgiving and funded youth programs when the neighborhood needed them. East Oakland adopted him as a folk hero, a king who came from nothing and decided to own everything. Before his sentencing, he looked his probation officer in the eye and said he liked money, liked jewelry, liked fine cars, and went out and got them. He asked if that wasn't the American way. In 1985, federal prosecutors answered that question. Convicted under kingpin statutes, life without the possibility of parole. The judge called it exactly what it was. He lasted 1 year in Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary. On August 21st, 1986, 2 days before his 32nd birthday, a fellow inmate stabbed him multiple times inside his cell. The dispute was over $10. His funeral stopped Oakland. A horse-drawn carriage carried his bronze casket through 14 blocks of streets. Rolls Royces and limousines stretched behind it. Thousands lined the route. The spectacle was so enormous that the US government took notice and began reshaping how they managed the assets and public image of convicted drug lords. They didn't want another funeral like that one. But Oakland didn't get better when Mitchell died. It got worse. Without his grip holding the market together, dozens of gangs went to war over the same territory. Violence spiked. Criminologists eventually gave the phenomenon its own name: the Felix Mitchell paradox. The king's death didn't bring peace. It brought chaos. Griselda Blanco. She was 11 years old when she allegedly put a gun to a boy's head in a wealthy Medellín neighborhood and pulled the trigger because his family wouldn't pay. She had already been picking pockets for years. She was just getting started. Griselda Blanco was born in 1943 in Colombia. She grew up in the slums of Medellín, raised by a mother who sold herself to survive. Surrounded by men who treated violence as currency, she absorbed every lesson. By the time she was 19, she was gone. By her 20s, she had married into the trade, had 3 sons, and crossed into the United States on forged papers with a plan already forming. In Queens, she and her second husband built a cocaine pipeline straight from Colombia. They used female couriers who concealed the product in specially designed lingerie. It worked until it didn't. When she suspected her husband was skimming, she shot him dead in front of their 5-year-old son. She had her third husband killed too. The nickname followed naturally, the Black Widow. By the late 70s, she had relocated to Miami, and Miami would never be the same. Her network moved $8 million worth of cocaine every single month. In 1979, her gunmen opened fire inside the Dadeland Mall in broad daylight. It is widely considered the opening shot of the Miami drug wars. Investigators eventually linked her to at least 40 murders. When a hitman accidentally killed a rival's 2-year-old son instead of the father, she reportedly expressed no regret. One less witness, she said. She was arrested in 1985, 15 years for trafficking. Then came the murder charges. Her star witness, her own hitman, was caught having explicit phone calls with secretaries inside the prosecutor's office. The case collapsed. She pleaded to second-degree murder and walked out of prison in 2004, deported back to Colombia. She spent 8 years living quietly in Medellín. Then on September 3, 2012, she stepped out of a butcher shop in the Belén neighborhood. A man on a motorcycle pulled alongside her and shot her twice in the head. She was 69. Here's the detail that history refuses to let go. Griselda Blanco pioneered the motorcycle assassination in Miami during the 1970s. She invented the method, and it was the method that killed her. The godmother died exactly the way she had taught others to kill. Amado Carrillo Fuentes. He was 12 years old when he walked out of his village and told everyone watching that he would not return until he was rich. He kept that promise. Amado Carrillo Fuentes was born in 1956 in Sinaloa. His father farmed. His uncle was a co-founder of the Guadalajara cartel. Family connections opened the first door. After that, talent and ruthlessness opened every other one. He left home with a 6th grade education and started at the bottom, overseeing cocaine shipments through Chihuahua. He studied the border the way other men study textbooks. He learned the routes under Pablo Acosta. He worked alongside Rafael Aguilar Guajardo, who controlled the Juarez corridor. Then in 1993, he had Aguilar shot dead in Cancun while the man was on vacation. He stepped over the body and took the cartel for himself. What came next was unlike anything the drug trade had ever seen. He purchased over 30 Boeing 727 jets, stripped out the seats, and filled them with cocaine, up to 15 tons per flight, moving from Colombia to Mexico at commercial aircraft speeds. They called him El Señor de los Cielos, the Lord of the Skies. He formed alliances with the Cali cartel, placed generals and politicians on his payroll, and accumulated an estimated net worth of $25 billion. Mexico's own top anti-drug official was taking his money. He had almost no photographs in circulation. He dressed like a businessman. He moved like a ghost. By 1997, the pressure became impossible to outrun. American indictments multiplied. His military protector was arrested. Federal agents nearly grabbed him at his own sister's wedding. He made a decision. He would stop being Amado Carrillo Fuentes entirely. On July 4, 1997, he checked into the Santa Monica Hospital in Mexico City under a false name. 8 hours of plastic surgery, a new face, liposuction removing over 3 gallons of fat. He was wheeled into the recovery room. By morning, he was dead. The official cause was complications from anesthesia. He was 42 years old. 4 months later, the 3 surgeons who operated on him were found along the Mexico-Acapulco highway. Jaime Godoy Singh, Ricardo Reyes Rincon, and Carlos Humberto Avila. All 3 were stuffed inside steel drums and encased in concrete. Before their bodies surfaced, the Mexican Attorney General had already issued warrants against them, charging them with intentional homicide. The theory was that someone had ordered a lethal dose of sedative administered on the table. Whether the Lord of the Skies died by accident or by design, the men who could answer that question were already dead. His family insisted he was alive. The DEA compared the sightings to Elvis. The truth never came. Pablo Escobar. He started with tombstones. He would steal them from graveyards, sand off the names, and sell them as new, then cars, then forged documents, then kidnapping. Then he killed the man whose ransom he had already collected because he could. By 25, Pablo Escobar had decided there was only one rule worth following: take what you want and eliminate whatever stands in the way. Escobar was born in 1949 outside Medellín. His father worked a farm. His mother taught school. They were poor, and he wanted out. He dropped out and looked at the world around him and saw only one industry moving real money. In the mid-70s, he founded the Medellín cartel. He sourced cocaine from Peru and Bolivia, processed it in jungle laboratories, and flew it north into the United States by the ton. At his peak, the cartel controlled 80% of the world's cocaine supply, 70 to 80 tons per month. Forbes placed him among the 10 wealthiest people on the planet. His net worth reached an estimated $30 billion. He built schools. He built hospitals. He constructed entire neighborhoods for Medellin's poor and handed out cash in the barrios like a politician buying votes. They called him Robin Hood. He ran for Congress and won a seat. For a moment, it seemed he might legitimize everything. Then Colombia's justice minister began publicly exposing him. Escobar had him assassinated. A presidential candidate came next. Then he bombed Avianca Flight 203, killing all 107 people aboard, trying to eliminate a single passenger who turned out not to even be on the plane. In 1991, facing extradition to the United States, he surrendered on his own terms. He designed his own prison. La Catedral had a nightclub, a jacuzzi, a soccer field, and a fully operational cartel being run from inside its walls. When the government finally attempted to transfer him to a real facility in 1992, he simply walked out. The manhunt that followed became one of the largest in history. On December 1st, 1993, Escobar turned 44. The next morning, he made a mistake. He called his son, Juan Pablo, and stayed on the line long enough for the search block to triangulate his location. They traced the signal to a residential neighborhood in Medellín. They moved within hours. Escobar ran across the rooftops. He was shot in the leg, the torso, and through the head. He was pronounced dead at the scene. 25,000 people attended his funeral. Some wept. Some prayed over the casket like he was a saint. The Medellín cartel collapsed within months of his death, but his family has never accepted the official account. For decades, they have maintained that Escobar was not shot by police. They say he put the gun to his own ear and pulled the trigger himself. He had told them for years that was exactly how he would go, that he would never be taken alive, that if it ever came to that, he would do it himself. No one outside that rooftop knows the truth for certain. What is known is this: the most powerful drug lord in history died alone on a roof in the city where he was born, 1,000 miles from the empire he built, with no way left to run.